5:05 at AM 850 KFUO. This is the afternoon show. I'm Diane Summers.
And I'm Steve Siegal. Hour number 3 on a Wednesday afternoon.
We're going to talk about ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder, with Michael Sandler, who is founder of the Creative Learning Institute and a practicing ADD coach and public speaker. He's a regular columnist for the national ADD magazine, Attitude, and is a featured speaker at national ADD conventions. He is the author of College Confidence with ADD for Source Books. And welcome to the afternoon show, Michael.
Well, thank you so much, Steve and Diane. Thank you for having me on the show.
What is your experience with ADD?
Oh, personally, I have it myself. I was diagnosed with it twice. First as a child, age of 7, after my mom went into her first parent-teacher conference and was told by 2 teachers with over 32 years of experience I was the worst student they'd ever had in their lives. And then I was...
There's a confidence builder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was struggling badly, but it turns out that I was just, for lack of a better term, bored out of my mind. I was a sharp student, but because I was unable to focus or concentrate well enough, they instead just said I was the worst student.
So how long ago was this?
Oh, that was quite a few years ago. That was when I was 7 years of age. When I grew up, I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to school, to graduate school. I had made it through college itself. Actually, I'll back up just a little bit. I was put on medication at the age of 7, which helped me till the age of 12, though it didn't answer the how-to questions. How do you work with other students? How do you get assignments turned in on time? But it did help me to focus and stay calm enough in the classroom to pay more attention. Then they took me off of medication because they didn't know at the time what it did to a boy in puberty. Now they found out it's safe, but at the time they didn't know. So I struggled for a few years, went through 3 different junior highs, for example, before I found a way to get through, which for me was I needed something to give me that self-esteem and confidence builder. For me, that was bicycle racing. And that's what really got me through high school and then into college. And in college, a miracle for myself is that I went to a place called the Colorado College, where you only have to take 1 class at a time. It's on what's called a block system. So I could cram and hyper-focus, because ADD isn't really about having a deficit or a decrease in the ability to focus. It's about an inconsistency in focus. When something is very intense or is very interesting to us, we're able to hyper-focus or focus particularly well on one thing at a time. So for me, this school was great. Then I went on to race bicycles in Europe for a few years before meeting the front end of a full-size Peugeot automobile.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I was waved by a safety official through a blind turn into an oncoming car. And that hurt badly. But when I came back to the States, I got into business. And it was then that I started into the business world to really discover what it means to have ADD. I didn't know it at the time, but I was really good at starting a project, but not being able to get it done. Being able to get myself into a position, but then the papers on the desk would pile up. I wouldn't be able to return phone calls. Nothing was making sense, and I wasn't able to follow through on things. I thought it wasn't an ADD issue. At the time, I was told you don't have ADD as an adult. It goes away. Somehow, magically, at age 18, your brain ceases to be the way it was and turns into something else. So I decided to go back to school, get more education, and that this would cure the problem. And that's when I started to learn about adult ADD. Because as soon as I got back to school, and I did it in what I would call typical ADD or creative mind fashion, I wanted to go back to school for business and then later to understand computers. But I had the head of the computer program at Colorado State University say, well, why don't you take both degrees at the same time? Nobody's ever done that before. I thought to myself, if a little is good, more is better. Why not? And that's when it all hit home. Because on my first quiz, I was so overwhelmed by everything. It was an accounting quiz, something that I knew how to do very well and tutored other students on. But having an ADD mind is like having 20 different radio stations blaring all at the same time and not being able to tune in one in particular. So I go to take this quiz I've tutored other students on. It's an online quiz, 60 minutes. I click start, and I see 59:59, 59:58, 59:57. I better get started. Oh my God, I better get started. I better get started or I'm not going to do well on the test. I better get started or I'm not going to do well on the test. I need to do well on this test. If I don't do well on this test, I can't do well on this class. If I can't do well on this class, I can't do well on the program. Oh my God, I'm going to flunk out of the program. 51 minutes. 41 minutes. What's my name? I can't remember my name. What's my name? Who am I? What am I doing? 31 minutes. I got a 3 out of 24 on my first accounting quiz, for which I tutored other students. And for the next 2 semesters, I don't know how I survived. Nothing went much better than that.
Do most ADD, in your experience, most ADD students go through that similar soliloquy?
They do in their own fashion. We all tend to have some sort of either a meltdown at some point where we know what to do but can't get the job done, or unfortunately, an even worse scenario plays out, which is either we're told that we're the worst student that a teacher had ever had in their lives, and eventually we give up and agree and then show them that, yes, we are the worst student in the world, or we may have a quiet, inattentive type of ADD, which is quite common more among girls than among boys, in which case we internalize the message. We don't get in trouble in the classroom because we stay nice and quiet. We're not bouncing off the walls like the hyperactive child. Instead, we say, there's something wrong with me. I'm daydreamy. I'm spacey. There's some sort of problem. It must be me. And then again, you end up giving up. And so it's a problem of either having a complete crash and burn or waving the white flag at the world. Either way...
Is it somewhat of a miracle that anybody goes to college with that type of circumstance?
You're not kidding. The statistics show that for a child who has ADD, the odds of him or her successfully getting through college, 5%. 5% of students with ADD will actually graduate college. And
all right, that's really low. I mean, that's incredibly low.
It's incredibly low. Once you get to college, if your student can get into college, the odds are much higher. But the problem is getting through all of the hurdles just to make it through grade school, junior high, then high school, without giving up and waving the white flag or saying, well, if you say I'm the worst student, I might as well be the worst student. It's very hard to do.
Is there a double difficulty in that in college you really don't have to be there? You know, you paid your money and you go or you don't go, and no one chases after you and says, you know, now do your homework, Johnny.
Well, Johnny would think on the first day of school, that's the best thing in the world. Johnny would think, you mean I don't have to show up? I don't have to turn in regular assignments? There aren't pop quizzes? Woohoo! But the problem is that, it's just as you're saying, without that accountability, it's very hard for us to stay on track, follow through, and get the job done. That's actually the big difference between high school and college, is that in high school, even though we think we're totally on our own and saying, you know, I can do it, there are teachers who, if you start to fall behind, are quickly going to say something, and there's a whole support network in place that will wave the white flag for you before you even know that there's a huge problem. In college, you can flunk a semester before you know.
Oh, yeah, and I've seen that happen. Now, Michael, the description you give, oh, I don't have to turn anything in.
Yeah.
Great, so I'll slough off today. I mean, that happens to almost everybody. What is it that's unique to those who are dealing with ADD that makes it different? I mean, I do that. Maybe I have that. I don't know. Diane mentioned it before. I mean, it's like human nature almost. Oh, I don't have to do it. Well, okay, so I won't. Or I won't be able to concentrate. Well, what's the difference?
The difference is that sooner or later, you'll pick up the ball and run with it. And what?
Maybe?
Hopefully. What happens?
Ideally, yeah.
here's the
maybe not before somebody stands over me with whether it's my dad with a stern look when I was a little kid, or a teacher in the classroom with the eyeglasses pulled down on the nose so they look like a mean old grandma, or whether it's my boss at work. Oftentimes that's what did it.